Hello, everybody. Welcome to the AfterWord.
Thanks,
Today,
Betty.
Oh, you're welcome, Vince. Today, I am joined by Vince Black, Kirsten Black, and Zachary Austin.
Can you set the record straight? Say your last name the way it ought to be said.
Betty said it right. Austin.
All right. So
So
for those
it's
listening,
A-U-S-T-I-N, except it's O-S-T-I-N.
Correct, and now I have my special fun fact.
so for those listening, Richard, it's Austin, not Osteen.
Like you're brothers with Joel, right? Joel Osteen. Is that your?
Is that your?
Is that your
I've heard-
cousin?
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Betty's working with the knobs here, the dials and the knobs, getting it all sorted out.
While she's working, Zachary, why don't you introduce yourself to the listener?
Okay, but I love how our only listener changes every week. It's 1 week it's Richard,
Yeah.
1 week it's your mom.
My mom. It's always my mom.
And what's a little awkward is that you are our listener and you're here today. So, I mean, if somebody else were listening, what would you like them to know about you?
Like the fun fact? Or
No, just tell us about
You
yourself.
can do both. You can do your fun fact first and then your introduction.
Okay, fun fact is the spelling of my last name. The story goes, according to my father, is that my great-grandfather changed the spelling because the law was after him.
What was it?
Austin with an A.
A-U?
Probably,
That
yeah.
is a fun fact.
Yeah.
That
Do you
is-
think that holds? I mean, do you think that's true? Do you know enough about
My
your...
dad's not given to hyperbole, so
Yeah.
probably.
That's funny.
Do you know why the law was after him? Like, was he stealing
He
sheep?
can't say.
or-
He doesn't want it on
Yeah,
recording.
let's keep that on the DL. What would I like people to know about me? I have been married to the same woman for 35 years.
Nice.
I've been clean and sober for 36 years.
Nice.
I have 3 kids. My 2 oldest are girls, and then my youngest is a boy, ranging from 27, and he's 21. Yeah.
How many grandkids?
2.
Okay.
And do you still have corgis?
A corgi.
A corgi. I thought you had
corgi.
2.
Nope.
Just
we
one.
we did have 2. That's
Okay.
why. Yeah, Navin is a cowboy corgi, which is blue heeler and corgi mix, and he is a mess.
A spaz?
Yeah, he's got
Yeah.
issues.
I've got this theory about dogs. A lot of people who know me know this. We had a working dog once, and it was a terrible dog. Like, he had
Okay.
high anxiety, needed a ton of exercise, always got in trouble because he was bored. But so from that dog forward, I'm like, my theory is dumb dogs are the way to go.
Yeah, buy a
Like,
dumb dog.
Buy a
Get
dumb dog.
dog.
Like, they don't have to be super dumb, but like average to low intelligence, which is what both of our dogs have.
Hey, Steve is a genius.
Steve is
How
not
is
real
Steve
smart.
a genius?
His brain's like the size of a walnut, maybe. You know, the funniest thing is like Kevin will run after something in the backyard and Steve will just run barking in a completely opposite direction. And then the other morning, Steve literally ran into Kevin because like they were running like perpendicular to one another. So not real smart,
Not the
but
smartest.
they do not get in trouble. They're content to chase rabbits and squirrels. They don't need a lot of exercise or entertainment. So
They don't get a lot of exercise.
they don't need it. And average to low intelligence is the way to go with dogs.
She also has that same theory for husbands. Average to low intelligence.
Well, I was stoked to hear the theory because I thought the theory was going to be dogs are like their owners. So I thought you were going to be like, he's crazy and spastic and high anxiety because of you.
But
So-
super intelligent. And good looking and... Hey, Betty, why don't you get us back on the rails?
Hey, I will. So yesterday was Labor Day, which is a holiday, and it was on a Monday. So the intro question is, if you could choose any day of the week to have a holiday, what day would it be?
I don't know. But Vince says I don't answer the questions. But I'm like, I don't know. When you start out a week on Monday and you're like, oh, I've got Friday off, it's so nice. But then when you get to a weekend and you think, man, I've got Monday off, it's so glorious. Never really had like a Wednesday or a Thursday off. So I'm not sure if that would feel like a
4th of July is kind of is
Yeah.
one of those that...
I was gonna say I think I'd pick Thursday because if you have a Thursday off, in all probability they're going to give you Friday too because it's going to disrupt the week too much. So I'm like, maybe if you had Thursday, then you'd get a 4-day weekend. So maybe a Thursday or a Tuesday. I didn't really answer the question. I'm going to go solid not Wednesday. Like, that is my answer.
Wow. All right. What about you all? I only work Sunday, so it's hard for me. It's hard for me to answer the question. I only work a few hours on a Sunday.
The number of times that I've gotten asked that question is actually remarkable. Like, what does Vince do other than just preach on Sunday morning?
Yeah, a lot of people will say, "What do you do? I know you do Sunday, but what else do you do?"
I don't think you do anything else.
That's fine. I'll just keep it that way. Low to average intelligence, only working a couple hours a week.
100% Monday.
Really?
Yeah. I think, like Kirsten said, usually you forget over the weekend, and then you're like, yes, I got Monday off. And it seems like if you take a Friday off, your Monday's a train wreck. Like, you're trying to keep track or catch up with stuff, and it makes your weekend long, and it makes your upcoming week short. So I would say Monday 100%.
Those are some good points.
Those are.
What if it was Tuesday, though? Then you maybe would get Monday also. So, I feel like my answer still is valid.
I work in corporate America, so that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So, but I'm with you.
Yeah. What about I like the Friday and Monday. Was that an option?
No.
Oh, that's not an option.
It was in my category. Yes, it's an option.
No. So I take Friday off. So Thursday?
Yes.
There we go.
Yes. Monday's not great for you. I mean, Monday's okay, but you work on Sunday, and so
Monday I'm tired and kind of.
It's your only work day, Sunday, so it is nice to have a day to recover.
About you, Betty?
I would probably also say Thursday for the same reason, since I don't work on Friday.
Yeah.
Thursday.
So we can all agree Wednesday's not the day that we would want off. So I feel good about that. There's a unanimous.
Betty
Well,
doesn't
I
agree.
wouldn't. No, I wouldn't choose Wednesday. I have a friend who has 4-day work weeks, and he has Wednesdays off every week, which seems strange. But
So he
likes
works
it.
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday?
Yes.
So he works 2 days, off 1 day, 2 days, off 2 days.
Yes.
Huh. I've always thought if I could find a job where I could work 40 hours straight and then have the rest of the time off, that's what I would do. Get 40 hours done, just knock it out, and then take a day to recover, and then you got some time.
I feel like medicine is kind of a place where that happens sometimes.
Oh. Okay.
Anyway.
Carry on.
Vince, would you please give us a recap of 2 Samuel 20?
Yep, 2 Samuel 20. The way I broke it up, and I'll just give the recap in this way. There are three categories of people, or at least 3 interactions we see. Starts off with Betty's eating a cucumber, a raw cucumber, like a banana, and it's real
She
crunchy.
walked in with it in a napkin, just holding it like a
Why don't
monkey
you
holds a
eat that
banana.
in the microphone so everybody can listen. All right.
Did you look up the worst food to eat while doing a podcast?
Yes, definitely.
And that was it.
That or tortilla chips.
Yeah, Cheetos. All right. It's going to be real distracting. I don't know what to do here. No, that's fine. All right, here's the recap. Sheba, we're told at the very beginning, is a worthless man. He rebels against David, tries to pull all the Israelites to his side. They do it. And then we switch pretty quickly. We've got this one verse in there that talks about David going back to his house and what he has to do with or what he does to care for the concubines who are left, which I think is interesting that that's thrown in there. It's pretty significant, but it has one verse. Then the king, knowing that David, knowing that Sheba is rebelling against him, takes Amasa and asks Amasa to go gather the men, I think probably in hopes that he would be able to guard himself from what Sheba is doing or go after Sheba. Amasa takes too long, and so David grabs onto Abishai and sends Abishai out to gather people up together. In the process, Joab finds Amasa, acts like he's going to bring him in for a blessing, hugs him, asks him how he's doing, and then stabs him all the way through and leaves him basically for dead. They put his body in the field and cover it up so no one knows about it. And Joab goes back to David. In the process, Joab actually, before he goes back to David, he searches down Sheba, or he's trying to search down Sheba, goes to the city where Sheba is. A wise woman yells out over the wall that they're building a ramp up to. Does anybody else's mind go to Monty Python at this point, where the two guys with the coconuts ride up and they yell over the wall? Anyone? No one. Okay. I think when Eric gets back, he's going to fire all of us. I think we're done. Anyway, Joab goes to the wall. The woman calls for Joab and says, "What are you doing? You're only looking for one person. Why are you going to take the whole city?" Joab says, "Well, if you can give me Sheba, then I will relent." And so she has the people cut the head off of Sheba and throw his head out over the wall. And then Joab goes back to David after taking Sheba. And then the chapter ends with this list of people who have been faithful all along to David. And we just see this list spelled out. So here's the way I broke it up. Let me try to get my head around this a little bit. Sheba is a rebellious person in complete rebellion against David. There's no real way to say it. The author even tells us he's worthless. So that's how we start. In the middle, we've got Joab, someone who looks like he's faithful to David, someone who for chapters and chapters now we've seen as David's right-hand man, but has done a lot of things to promote himself. And so while he looks faithful, most of what he's doing is self-promotion or what is going to make him look good. And then at the end, you've got a list of people who have been faithful to the king through and through. There's the recap. That took a while with the cucumber and the Monty Python.
No one will know after I edit.
You're going to take all that out?
No, probably
Okay.
not. I had a question actually about the concubines, and I was a little bit confused about why David did build a house for them and just kind of set them aside. If I know you mentioned yesterday Absalom going in to the concubines and consummating that relationship, but weren't they David's concubines first? So maybe, I think I'm a little confused about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to say it. That's not crass. I'll try to be careful here. But, I mean, Absalom was the last one who had his way with them. And so in David's mind, at least many commentators think that David is being reformed. He is turning from his wily ways and repenting. And a part of that is he knows what has happened with Absalom, and he is trying to be repentant in his life, and so just abstaining from all the things that could be unlawful. So that's the thought there.
I think, as you said, it can show just a change in David's character, that the thing that has gotten him into so much trouble all along is that he's had this unbridled passion, that he had all these wives and concubines, and so I think this is maybe showing that God has, that God's discipline for David has had its effect, and that David now is bridling these passions that previously he thought could not be bridled and really drove him and were the thing that ended up getting him into so much trouble. And so I think it can reflect the fact that God's discipline has had its effect, and David is changing.
Thank you. That makes sense. Then going back to what you were saying of how you were forming this passage and the structure, you're talking about 3 different categories of people. So Sheba we see as worthless, Joab we see as seemingly faithful, and then it ends with a list of faithful people. So how does their posture toward David translate toward our view of Jesus today and how we interact with him today?
I mean, obviously with Sheba, there's those who just rebel against the king, who have no interest in Jesus, and they don't claim to have interest, and their life shows that, which is probably the vast majority of the world today. And then I think we see Joab. We can see a lot of different kind of religious postures as we consider Joab. We were talking beforehand, and I think one of the things we see maybe a measure of the prosperity gospel in the posture of Joab, in that I have expectations of what the king will do for me. I'll serve the king as long as it benefits me, but then as soon as the king doesn't respond the way that I think he should or I want him to, then I begin to question or push against the king. And we see that in our own hearts. I think that are we serving God because we're hoping to get something from him? We're hoping to gain something. And then when God doesn't respond the way that we're hoping, maybe we begin to question or wrestle or turn from him. And so I think we can see that in Joab.
Yeah. Let's back up a bit. What are some other ways that seem faithful today? So we talked about, you said the prosperity gospel, like that can seem like there's a leaning toward Jesus. This is what I'm all about, Jesus. It seems right, but there's a little bit of it's distorted in that what you're really about is you. What are some other ways that we see what seem like faithfulness?
Well, it's all about Jesus and what I can gain from him.
Right.
It's not about his rule, his authority, but it is about me. Like, how am I going to gain from this relationship?
Yeah. What are others?
The most, like the first one that comes to mind for me is legalism, meaning I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm supposed to be doing it, not because, I'm enamored with who Jesus is.
Yeah. So it's a faithfulness out of duty.
Yeah.
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 Maybe also some more like progressive views of like Christianity, like still following the culture like very closely and things of the culture, but then slapping like the label of Christianity on it, and like from an outsider's perspective seems like it's Christianity and like they're following Jesus, but then from like knowing scripture and knowing what is true, it's going a whole different direction.
So maybe like even the people that will claim to be Christians but say Jesus was just about love, and so our only call is to love, but we don't talk about his justice, about his character, about things that go beyond love. We just focus in on this one character aspect of Christ.
Yeah, I think related to your Zachary, but the other side, the other pendulum swing is those not legalism, but those who would say, well, because of grace, I can do whatever I want. I'm going to be faithful to Jesus, and he's going to be forgiving, and I'll step toward whatever I want. And so it has this, it smells a little bit of faithfulness, but it's about self again. Are there others that come to mind?
I don't have others that come to mind, but I think what is coming to mind is the fact that I see pieces of my heart in all of those. And I think that's the reality of the Christian walk, is that we're never going to walk in perfect faithfulness to Christ. And there's always going to be pieces of us that are hoping to do it right and hoping to do well. And yet the reality is that because we live in a fallen world and we are fallen people, we're always going to screw up. And so, I've gone through many seasons where walking with the Lord has felt like a duty. And so I would probably lean towards legalism in that. And I follow the rules, maybe hoping that God will see my effort and God will see my obedience and count that as something. And I've gone through seasons where I've presumed upon his grace, and I've lived in ways that are probably I knew were not honoring to him, and yet thought, well, God's going to forgive me for that. And I've gone through seasons where I've had expectations of what God would do for me, and thinking that in some way, some twisted way, he owed me something, or he would recognize my good works, and so he would pay me back for those. And so I don't know, it's humbling to consider that I'm not that much different than Joab, and maybe the difference between Joab and I don't know his heart, is that I desire for those things to be different. I desire for those things to change, and I think God is changing those things, and yet I also recognize that it's a process. And so I don't know, I always want to bring to light understanding of the process, because I think it's easy to become discouraged when we think, well, yeah, I follow God, but it's a duty right now. And and then that can trickle into, am I even a believer? And so just constantly bringing grace to it and understanding that no one does this perfectly. And I think everyone could probably find themselves on this spectrum somewhere. And so finding yourself on that spectrum and then confessing that and asking the Lord to bring you to the right place.
Yeah.
When you see like your heart leaning in those different directions, what does it look like to be able to identify that too, and then go through that process of shifting your heart?
I think it starts with asking the Lord. If you're not sure where you are on that spectrum, ask the Lord to show it to you. And I think He would be faithful to do that. And then something that's often helpful for me is finding people in Scripture that had a similar experience or struggled with the same thing, and seeing how the Lord interacted with them, and taking time to confess that, and then asking God to change my heart and change the way that I view Him. And then I think it's sitting in kind of in that season of repentance, and also waiting patiently, because I've had very few experiences where it's an overnight change. I think often the Lord works through time and process. And so I think it's making note of where you are, even writing it down, and then taking time to intentionally press into that, and then looking for ways that you see God at work in your heart, changing you.
I think my experience is that it's really hard for me to do alone. As much as I don't like people correcting me, who does? Maybe does anyone? No? Okay. As much as I don't like people correcting me, I can often get in my own head and justify in my own head why the actions I'm doing are right or the right direction or whatever. But if I have people around me who are keeping me in check, I think that's where I'm able to see areas that are needing change or needing a redirect. I don't know. Do you all experience that? It's rare for me that on my own. So I hear what you're saying, Kirsten, and I appreciate it. And I think we start there. We start with asking God to show us these things, but it's rare for me that I just sit alone and think, oh, here are the things that need to change in my own heart. There are some of those things, but often those are brought to light by other people, by conflict that I've either started or been engaged in or whatever, where those conversations come up. And I wonder if Joab is in that same place, that he's in some ways an untouchable character. No one around him is calling him on anything. I mean, you remember a couple of weeks ago when David said, "Take care of my son Absalom," and he says, Joab says to the guy, "Well, why didn't you saw Absalom? Why didn't you take his life right away?" And he says, "Well, the king told us not to." And Joab went and stabbed him through 3 times, took the life of Absalom on the spot. So I just wonder if Joab has positioned himself in a place where there is no one who's able to speak into his life, and he's unable to hear from anyone. Therefore, he's justified in his own mind that the fruit that he's bearing is actually good fruit, to use the words of Jesus, that this is good fruit. I'm doing this for the king. I know that he doesn't want Sheba against him. I'm going to go take out Sheba. I don't trust that Amasa can do it. I'm going to kill Amasa on the way and do what I need to do, and then I'm going to walk back to the king and look like I'm faithful. That's good fruit. But no one's telling him, no, that's not.
Well, and you asked the question yesterday, do I have others in my life that can speak into my life, and am I humble enough to listen to it? And I think that's the key is, am I humble enough to listen to it? I know of a number of people in my life who've always kind of been untouchable, that you can't give feedback, you can't give correction. And so there is this sense of and I think most of the time people kind of give up and say, well, I'm not going to say anything because it's not going to make any difference. And all it's going to do is create more conflict. And so I think that's a place just with your own heart of, am I willing to take feedback, and am I willing to hear it? Yeah. I think another place is maybe as an outsider looking in. I remember years ago in our township, we had a woman who was really struggling in her walk with the Lord, and she asked a township, do I just fake it till I make it? Do I just fake faithfulness to the Lord until God changes my heart? And, and I think that I imagine a number of people spoke into that. I don't remember what was spoken to her other than remain faithful, just keep pressing in and the Lord's going to meet you. And it was probably a year later, and I was meeting with her, and she was talking about how she'd been reading and what the Lord was showing her. And I just said, do you remember a year ago where you were in your walk and that you were in a place of feeling like you had to fake it till you made it? And now look at where you are. Like, you've been faithful and the Lord has met you in that. And it was really encouraging for her to hear that and to remember and recognize. And I think often when we're in the midst of it, we don't see how God is working and how God is changing us. And so I think being super intentional in those relationships that you have with other people, that you're privy to their walk, to be able to point out the ways that you do see God meeting them in those spaces and answering prayers, because I think sometimes we forget our lowest points of desperation, especially as God brings us out. And so being super intentional to bring voice to those.
Yeah. What about you, Zachary? Do you have, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, as I was sitting under the teaching Sunday, I was like Kirsten was saying, I was identifying all of those characters in my own life. What's been kind of bouncing around in my head since is how God has redeemed all of those things along the way. Certainly, if I'm being super transparent, early on in my walk, like I answered God's call early on because I needed something. You know what I mean? It was a transaction. Like, I desperately needed my life to change, and what I heard over the pulpit was, if you trust Christ, then your life is going to change dramatically and it's going to be wonderful. And that's not how that story went at all. In fact, my life got more difficult. But so that, and then legalism, like you said, faking it till you make it, or doing the things that you're called to do, meaning it could be as simple as Bible reading or prayer or the means of grace.
Right.
In doing those things, even though I didn't feel like doing them, or that, it wasn't super inspiring, but I can look back now and see how God used those, redeemed those, and used those to increase my faith. Yeah. Super encouraging.
I think an area the enemy can really discourage us is thinking that if we don't have the right motives or the perfect application of following God, then it's going to be worthless. And it's encouraging to hear, like, we're going to do it wrong. We're going to screw up. We're going to have wrong motives and wrong direction a lot of the time. And yet God is faithful to redeem that. And so I think that it's all about God's faithfulness to us and his faithfulness in our story, and recognizing that there's never going to be the perfect and righteous walk that needs to be there. That's just the reality, and yet there is a perfect and righteous God who will meet us in that.
And certainly having people, like you mentioned and Kirsten mentioned, like having people in my life that could speak truth into my life has been a huge part of my walk. But at the same time, like the means of grace, being under sound teaching on Sunday morning has been a major component of my sanctification. There's no question about it, because there are times when, Sunday's a perfect example, where I've been, where God has used the teaching to expose sin that I wasn't aware of. And that's been a theme, for 30 years in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. It's encouraging. For me, it's one of those, I'll sit and read or even study through a passage to preach, and there are things that come to mind that are convicting to my heart. There are ways that I see that God is working to change me, and so I see those things. But for me, there's just the added beauty or the added weight of other people affirming that. So I often will say, hey, here's something I'm reading. What are your thoughts here? Here's a way I feel like God's changing me. So anyway, I think what I'm getting at, and you all are not against this, you're for it, you're speaking it too, but so much of the time what I'm sensing God doing in my heart, I need the affirmation that I'm not kooky, because I know that my heart is, like God's word says, deceptive at times and wicked. And so there are times when I think, I think this is what God wants, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's something else. I need to hear the confirmation of others to say, yeah, that I see that too in you. I see some areas there that could change as well. And again, back to Joab, because it's not about me and my sin, guys. It's Joab. Let's not talk about me. Back to Joab, though. He doesn't have that. Like I just don't see anyone who's able to speak into his life and to rearrange. I mean, he didn't go to anyone and say, "Hey, here's a thought I had. What if we try to get ahead of Amasa, take his life, and really take over here?" I mean, he doesn't have anyone who's speaking into him in that way. So,
well, we've talked a lot about fruit. Sorry, I honestly feel like I have a piece of cucumber stuck in my throat.
Is cucumber a fruit?
I think it's a vegetable.
I feel like it's a vegetable.
Because you feel like it is? Is that?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Are you ever going to eat a cucumber while podcasting again?
Maybe.
Have you learned your lesson?
No.
We're here. We feel like God has placed us in your life to affirm that you should not do this.
Hey, I asked the Google. It says, yes, cucumbers are botanically classified as fruits because they grow from flowers and contain seeds.
Oh, well.
So you're bearing the fruit of the cucumber. Anyway, we've talked a lot about fruit. Go ahead.
Yes, we've talked a lot about fruit and bearing good fruit versus bad fruit. And the passage referenced for that in the sermon was Luke 6:43 through 45. But are there times where fruit has not been what you expected, whether it's good fruit that's actually, or something that appears good is actually bad, or something that appears bad is actually good, whether that's in your own life or in the life of someone around you?
Yeah, I mean, I think following the analogy of fruit, it takes a long time to grow fruit. We've had, I actually can't remember what kind of trees I bought in the backyard, but I got them at Costco one day. They were like $12, and essentially they were sticks. And they've been growing now for like 6 years, 7 years.
And they're like 6 or 8 feet tall now.
They've never grown fruit.
Yep, that's true.
I think it's a peach tree and a cherry tree, but it might be apple. But anyway, that's not the point. It takes a long time for a tree to bear fruit. It's not something that you see right away. And then as it grows, you don't know what kind of fruit, is it,
especially if you don't remember what kind of tree it is.
But you don't know if the tree is going to be diseased. You don't know if there's some sort of, fungus or infection in the tree that's going to cause the fruit to appear good, but then you bite into it and it's nasty, or vice versa. And so I think it's the same when talking about fruit in our lives, is that it takes a long time to grow fruit. I think the hope and expectation is that, I've followed Jesus, so the fruit that I bear is going to be beautiful. It's going to be great. And while that does happen, sometimes it's often a process, and it's often something that it takes a long time to bear fruit. It takes a long time for fruit to grow. And it takes a long time to discern if fruit is good or bad, especially with other people. I mean, I can think of specific people in my life who seemed to be bearing really beautiful fruit, and there were good things that they did, and there was good discipleship that happened, and yet ultimately it ended up being bad fruit. And maybe not across the board, maybe it was a rotten apple in a fruit bowl that ended up kind of infecting some other apples, but I don't know that it's always this category of black and white, like good and bad. I think it's a process that takes time to discern.
I'm going to push a little bit, not on you, Kirsten, on this whole idea of bad fruit and good fruit. And you mentioned, Betty, there are times when we don't know if it's bad fruit or good fruit. That doesn't. That's confusing to me. What are the ways in which we look at something when we see, oh, that's good. That's good fruit, but it's actually not good fruit. What's an example of that? Maybe I just need some help.
Well, the things that we talked about earlier, like legalism, the prosperity gospel, presumptive grace, like
But do those things look good?
I think they can look good. You can see someone that looks like they're super faithful to the Lord and showing up at every event and they're
So it's heart. It's what's
yeah,
at the heart.
but we don't know their heart. But eventually, the fruit is going to be shown in that. Like
Gotcha.
at first view, the fruit looks like faithfulness. It looks like righteousness. It looks like what they're doing is pleasing to the Lord. But then, if the only reason they're going is to check their box of righteousness and holiness,
Gotcha.
and to be able to say, "Hey, I did this," that's bad fruit. It looks good at the front end until you really get to know the heart, which we can't always know the heart. And so I think there are times, this morning I cut into a peach and fed it to my boys, and it was terrible. It looked fine.
But we did make them eat it all.
I did, because I'm like, that's your fiber for the morning.
Eat it. It's horrible.
But no, I do think that there are times that fruit, it can look like fruit, but really it's actually bad fruit.
Okay.
Maybe this is an example too. I, in my life, have had a leader who I think was seemingly like bearing really good fruit, leading well, discipling others, and was someone really respected by me and my peers. But then like some things happened, and the reality of just patterns of sin in her life, and following that and believing very firmly that it was correct and right, and that scripture also supports that, I think was like an example too, where there was a lot of hurt. Like it seemed like she was someone that we could trust and was bearing good fruit. But I think the reality of sin in her view of that in her own life was something that maybe was less good.
Yeah.
But I think that's the hard thing, is that there are times that there is still good fruit born out of hard things. And so I think that's where it gets a little bit confusing. And I think maybe that's the grace of the Lord, in that there's a dying tree, and yet it can still produce fruit until it's fully dead. And I think what we want to say is like everything that leader did was bad. It was bad fruit, but that's just not the reality. Like she helped you grow, and she helped you mature, and she walked with you in such a way that showed you more of Jesus. And so I think those are the pieces that are really confusing, because there was a lot that Joab did that was good.
Yeah.
He was faithful. He was loyal. He fought for the king. So there was a lot that Joab did that helped David remain king and helped fulfill the calling of God on his life.
But it was his heart,
Yeah.
and the reasons he was doing it.
Yeah, and so I think it's important to recognize that God can still bring good fruit from sinful people and sinful situations.
Yeah, I think the hard thing for me to recognize at times, and again with Joab, I wonder if he were in this room having this conversation in those moments. I bet he believed he was bearing good fruit. So that's what's hard. There are leaders who, we can all probably come up with some popular leader, Christian leader, who has fallen and sinned in some way where they've had to be removed from their leadership position. I would guess that not many of them, some of them might, but not many of them would say, no, that was good fruit. They would probably say, no, that was bad and worth confessing and repenting. But I wonder if Joab believes, no, what I'm doing is good. It's good fruit. But it's a heart issue, right? So how do we know? How do we know?
What do you think, Zachary? You have a perplexed look on your face.
I was trying to remember if he turned off the iron.
Well, the narrative's hard for me to follow, if I'm being honest. But like,
the narrative of our conversation, or of chapter 20?
Yes. But like Joab knew he was serving himself, right? I mean, he knew that he was trying to persuade people away from David, if I got this right.
Yeah. Sheba was
what
doing
I'm getting
that
at
for
is,
sure,
I wonder if I'm just speaking for myself. A lot of times, I know
yeah.
in my heart of hearts that what I'm doing is wrong and sinful, but I convince myself that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know.
You can say I'm wrong also.
It just seems like he's pretty off in a ditch. I don't know how he could think that what he was doing was good.
I don't know. I mean, having been in ministry for a lot of years, I think there are people that feel like they are, exposing sin or are trying to call things to light, and feel like they're on this like righteous campaign, and really they're way off base, or they don't seem like they're in it for themselves. At least that doesn't seem to be the motivation, and there seems to be maybe a self-deception there. And so I think there are a lot of times that we are aware of when we're in things for ourselves. I think there's also times that we're so deceived by the enemy that we don't recognize that what we're doing is actually partnering with the enemy and not opposing him. And so I think it's both. I think that there's times that we're really blind to the things that we're doing.
I agree. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, you go to the extremes. I think Judas, until it was really clear that what he had done was off, I think he probably thought this is right. But we also know, so we get the sort of background story that the enemy had entered Judas but he didn't know that. He probably didn't know the enemy has entered me to make me move in this direction until he recognized, confessed, and took his own life. So I think of those sorts of extremes. But I just wonder about Joab, if he thought, I'm in this for the king. This is the right thing to do. Why would he have gone back to the king at the end of the chapter? Look, here we are, not confessing those things. I don't know. I keep beating this drum, but we need people in our lives to help us out, to help us see the ways in which we're blind to some of these things or not thinking clearly. So,
or the ways that we're not that much different than the enemy, in this situation. Like Joab was not that much different than Amasa, and yet he killed him. I mean, they were both leaders, but they'd both been appointed by David, and yet Amasa was not a great leader. He wasn't. They were both relatives of David. I don't know, just thinking about the fact that often the things that we condemn in others are things that are actually true in our own lives. Yeah. And so just recognizing the fact that we need help seeing it's easy to see other people's shortcomings and not so easy to see our own. And so inviting people into those spaces and conversations.
Yeah, I think we talked about this. You have this listed, Betty, as a question to talk through, who we think we are, and who others may think we are, or if we're different people in different settings. What do you all think about that? Like this idea that in one circle of people we're one way, and another circle of people we're a different way. We're not consistent. We hide. We dodge. People would be shocked if they knew this about us. I think that was the thing that came to my mind this week as I was working through this passage and how God was applying that to my heart of just looking at my life and seeing the ways I can pretend in front of certain groups of people to be a certain way. Thoughts there?
I mean, I'm a lot shorter and grumpier with my kids when there's no one around. I mean, even this morning I was being short and grumpy with my boys, and Vince kind of pulled me aside and said, hey, he did it much more gently, but he's like, basically, you're being short and grumpy with the boys. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. So I went and apologized to the boys, but I tend to keep that part of my personality under wraps when there's people around, because I don't want them to see me being a short and grumpy mom. But the reality is that it's a lot easier for me to let my sin shine in comfortable places.
This just came to mind when you were saying that. When you see parents who are snapping at their children, so this is me. Here's a confession on my part. I see parents that are like snapping at their children. I'm like, that's out of control. How could they be like that? But I think really what I'm saying is, how could they be like that in front of other people? Because that's absolutely how I am when I'm not in front of other people. Sorry, there's my confession. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this? Different groups of people, different realities for you?
With my family, I'm Bethany. And
Yeah.
just joking. I think very similar to what Kirsten was saying, except not my children. But I think with my parents especially, I can be like a lot shorter and quicker to become angry. And I feel like I hide that in front of like friends. I think I see that with like friends who I'm really close with, or friends that I've lived with a long time too, that some of that comes out. But I think because there are times that I can remember where I've shared that and confess that in groups, and people are like, oh, I could never like imagine that you're like that. It's like, oh yeah, because I put on a very different front with friends versus with my family, I think, a lot of the time. And I saw that a lot in school too, like the things that I would talk about or laugh about and stuff when I was with certain friends in certain classes versus like my other friends.
I was really hoping we were going to avoid this question, but
Avoid it, or should we just get Zachary's hiding in the corner? He's like, maybe they won't even call on me.
He's like with Saul in the baggage.
Yeah,
kinda
he's hiding in the
back.
luggage.
Yes, your question was, even during the sermon was like, do you behave differently with different groups of people? And I would say like my personality is pretty consistent, but in a sinful way. I immediately thought of, well, I cuss way more with my immediate family, my friends, meaning non-Christian friends, and coworkers. And this is how messed up I am. I, in my mind, have justified it like, oh, that kind of makes you edgy. Like you're an edgy Christian. Like that like creates an open door for people to have, conversation with you. You're not, the perfect straight-laced, Christian guy. And man, that's messed up. Yeah, so that was immediately what I thought when you asked the question. And that, that's got to change. Like, yeah, that's got to change.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different things like that hit. I don't know of anyone who is so to take out all the sort of relational examples we could use, we would all be convicted on our thought life, right? What we think about. Would people be shocked, if they knew we thought this way or thought that way or had this thought or whatever that is? I think that's challenging. And I think that's easy to shove aside too, because it's like, well, it didn't hurt anybody. It was just a passing thought. And so really that wasn't bad fruit. I'm able to shove that aside. But those things are damaging as well.
Okay. Well, in the essence of time, we must get to the last question, and we can do a little rapid fire last question answering.
God shots? Are these God shots?
Yes, God shots.
All right.
How does this passage raise your affections for God?
I think for me, it just points to the faithfulness of God. I mean, when you just think about how alike Joab I am, and yet God is faithful to me despite that. And so I think it points to, I think you said it on Sunday, Vince, that we're not faithful to someone who is not going to be more faithful to us. It doesn't matter how terrible my faithfulness is. God remains faithful to me.
That's good. I mentioned this on Sunday as well, but that list of people, I think it's extremely encouraging for me and raises my affections for God that there are people in the list who are just simple people. Shiva, the secretary, somebody who was not, famous out in front of everybody, calling all the shots, all of that, was just a faithful person who's mentioned. Zachary.
I know this is rapid fire. I would say probably a lot like what Kirsten said, but like how God consistently redeems circumstances, situations, my own sinful tendencies, how he redeems those to shape me and to woo me in a way that just makes Christ beautiful.
I think for me, it's the consistency of God's character. I think lived under a false belief, like growing up, that like God felt like a very different God in the Old Testament versus the New Testament. But just remembering God is God from the beginning of time to the end, and everything outside of that too. That He's just consistent, especially when we're not.
It's good.
Anyway, well, that concludes this week's Afterword. Next week, we will be in 2 Samuel 21 and 22, one of the final weeks.
It's coming to a close.
But thanks for listening.
Thank
we
you
will
all.
be around next week.
Over and out.